Well, welcome to the first of 3 live webinars here at the Virtual Tennessee Pretrial Symposium Series. My name is Jason Smith, and I'm a program manager at the Office of Criminal Justice Programs. And the Office of Criminal Justice Programs is excited to be hosting this series in partnership with the Crime and Justice Institute to talk about how we can improve pretrial systems throughout Tennessee. And during this series, we will hear from national pretrial experts as well as Tennessee stakeholders who have been successful in their efforts to improve pretrial practices in their jurisdictions. For more information about our speakers, please check out the event website. Now, the link is going to be on the slide, but we're also going to post a link in the questions tab. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about each of the 3 live webinars in this series. The first webinar will focus on Tennessee's commitment to improving pretrial practices, and we will learn about the steps that 3 counties have taken to make positive changes in their jurisdictions. Today we have panelists from Hamilton and Madison counties, and I'm very excited to hear about their motivation for starting their pretrial projects and their experiences so far. And in just a few minutes, we will hear from the Director of OCJP, Jennifer Brinkman, who will share more about our office's vision for pretrial in the state, as well as the opportunities available to counties who want to prioritize pretrial justice. The second webinar, scheduled for the same time this Thursday, will focus on identifying the challenges that face pretrial systems and then finding effective solutions to those challenges. During that second webinar, Tara Blair, the Executive Officer of the Kentucky Pretrial Services Department, will tell us how Kentucky was able to create an effective statewide pretrial services agency. She will explain the challenges they faced along the way and how they overcame those challenges. We will also share a resource that will help you identify the challenges facing your jurisdiction and how to take the first steps to implement solutions. And then the final live webinar is scheduled for Tuesday, September 29th, and will focus on the outcomes of pretrial reform efforts. 2 Tennessee counties, Davidson and Knox, have been working hard on improving their pretrial systems over the past several years. And panelists from both of those counties will join us to talk about their processes, the results they've seen so far, and their plans for their pretrial systems moving forward. In addition to these live webinars, we've also recorded some interviews with some national pretrial experts. These videos feature Judge Ronald Adrian, who recently retired from a 36-year career serving on the bench in Cleveland, Ohio, as well as the president-elect of the National Association of Pretrial Service Agencies, also known as NAPSA, Mr. Spurgeon Kennedy, who has over 40 years experience working as a pretrial service practitioner, trainer, and technical assistance provider. And you can watch these interviews at any time on our event website. And Layla is going to post the video link in our questions tab. Now, these speakers are experts in their fields, and I highly encourage you to watch the videos. The interviews are only 30 minutes each, and I guarantee they'll definitely be worth your time. I would now like to introduce the Director of Office of Criminal Justice Programs, Jennifer Brinkman. Jennifer brings her expertise working in the field of victim services to the Department of Finance and Administration, Office of Criminal Justice Programs, with over 20 years of professional experience working in the grants management and criminal justice fields. As the Director of OCJP, Tennessee State Administrating Agency, she is responsible for obligating over $60 million in federal and state funds for criminal justice initiatives annually. Her office oversees 14 federal grants, including the Department of Justice Edward Byrne Justice Assistance Grant, also known as JAG, because that's way too long to say every single time, the Victims of Crime Act Grant Program, also known as VOCA, Residential Substance Abuse Treatment Grant Program, RSAT, the Office on Violence Against Stop and SASP grant programs, and the Family Violence Prevention Services grant program. She has been with the state for over 10 years. Jennifer started at the OCJP to work on projects which were part of Governor Haslam's Public Safety Action Plan, which focused on violent crime and domestic violence. She brings her knowledge of the criminal justice system to OCJP strategic planning through the identification of gaps and available resources to meet those gaps by coordinating local government, state government, and community agencies across the state to leverage available resources to better serve the citizens in Tennessee. In her time at OCJP, Jennifer has been responsible for implementing initiatives to decrease crime in the state. Her work includes coordinating and implementing Johnson City, Tennessee Targeted Community Crime Reduction Project, increasing the number of family justice centers from 2 to 15, between 2012 and 2020. Implementing a statewide lethality assessment program with law enforcement, coordinating statewide stakeholder meetings on violence against women, and implementing pilot pretrial assessment projects. As part of Governor Lee's Executive Number 6, establishing the Tennessee Criminal Justice Investment Task Force, Jennifer attended committee meetings of the Education, Workforce Development, and Reentry Subcommittee and worked with stakeholders on the Victim Services Roundtables to gather information on the needs of crime victims. Before coming to OCJP, Jennifer worked for 2 years for the Tennessee Board of Probation and Parole, where she implemented evidence programming for offenders under the board. Her work in multiple levels of the criminal justice system demonstrates her commitment to improving outcomes for offenders and victims. Jennifer's past work experience includes the YWCA of Nashville and the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. Without further ado, thank you for being here today, Director Brinkman.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Jason. Didn't realize that I gave you my long bio, but wonderful to see you all here today. I want to say good afternoon to everyone. It is late in the afternoon and you are all here, and that shows your dedication. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Brinkman, and I am the Director of the Office of Criminal Justice Programs here in Tennessee. We are pleased to see you here, and we hope that you come away from these 3 e-symposiums with ideas for the future and a passion for change. In the past year, Governor Lee has made criminal justice reform one of the priorities for his administration. OCJP is also committed to criminal justice reform, which is why we funded this e-symposium series. We wanted to provide an opportunity for stakeholders to come together to hear from experts in the field and learn from the experiences of practitioners who have been doing this work. In addition to this symposium series, Tennessee has several projects dedicated to improving pretrial systems throughout the state, which you will learn more about as the webinar series continues. Everyone in our state deserves to live in a safe community, and we believe that deliberate changes to our criminal justice system that are implemented well can help us get there. We can save taxpayer dollars, hold people accountable when they break the law and victimize people, and shrink the size of government. These ideas are not mutually exclusive. Our mission at OCJP is to create a safer Tennessee for all its citizens. We do this mainly by distributing and managing federal and state grants. OCJP is responsible for approximately 22 different state and federal fund sources and currently oversees over 400 grants annually to various state departments, local governments, and nonprofit agencies. OCJP uses the grant funds to support innovative projects statewide in efforts to reduce criminal activity, provide services to victims of crime, and promote overall enhancement of the criminal justice system. You can learn more about our division at our website, and Leela will add that link to the questions tab for you. So far, OCJP has funded data-driven pretrial reform efforts in 5 counties. Davidson and Knox counties were the first to participate in a multi-year program started in 2015, and we are currently funding projects in Dyer, Lake, Hamilton, and Madison counties. And I see many of you here today. Welcome. We are excited about the progress we've seen in these counties so far, and that is just the beginning. We are committed to creating fair and effective pretrial systems throughout the state and want to support county leaders as you evaluate your systems and identify opportunities for improvement. OCJP plans to provide this support by offering small grants that are designed to help counties make incremental and sustainable improvements in their pretrial systems. We understand that not all jurisdictions have the resources that a Nashville or a Knoxville have, so we are adjusting our pretrial grant projects to make them more accessible to our smaller Tennessee jurisdictions. Instead of tackling comprehensive pretrial reform all at once, counties can apply for smaller grants to address the targeted needs and slowly build their capacity. We want to help communities build their capacity for both pretrial risk assessment and offer quality pretrial services in their areas. One of the goals of this series is to identify and prioritize the opportunities for improvement in your jurisdiction so you know where to start and can take advantage of these grant opportunities. We all know that many of our jails are overcrowded, and while incarceration rates are on the decline nationwide, Tennessee's is on the rise, and now stands at 10% above the national average. The increase has come at an enormous cost, with the Tennessee Department of Corrections spending topping $1 billion annually. The increasing incarceration rate has resulted in state prisoners serving their sentences in local jails because state facilities have run out of space to hold them. Currently, 1 in 4 state prisoners convicted of a felony offense is now serving their sentences in local jails. This fact, coupled with the overuse of pretrial detention, has led to chronic overcrowding in local jails throughout the state. In 2018, local jails held about 15,400 pretrial detainees, or people awaiting trial, conviction, or acquittal for felony or misdemeanor charges. These 15,400 people were 51% of Tennessee's local jail population in 2018, which is up from 30% from 1990. The state does not reimburse counties for housing inmates awaiting trial on felony charges. Pretrial detention does directly affect the finances of local governments and households. Tennessee's pretrial detainee population has grown faster than all other state and local incarcerations, accounting for 38% of the growth in total incarcerations from 1991 to 2018. 2/3 of pretrial detainees in 2018 were held on felony charges, while the other third was charged with misdemeanors. Both groups have grown faster than convicted incarcerations. From fiscal years 1991 to 2018, pretrial detentions for felonies grew 266%, while the state prisoner population, convicted felony offenders, increased 129%. Pretrial detention for misdemeanors rose 612% compared to 66% growth in incarceration for misdemeanor convictions. This is why I'm proud of the targeted investments by our Office of Criminal Justice Programs to start to carefully examine and address the issues of pretrial detention. On any given day in Tennessee, more than half of the people in our jails are those who have not been convicted of the crime with which they've been charged. Many of these individuals are also awaiting trial for nonviolent offenses. We want to give people the opportunity to stay in the community when possible so they can keep their jobs and keep their community connections. We also want to break the cycle of incarceration at the earliest point possible for people with mental illness and substance use issues who would benefit from treatment rather than jail. In order to address this cycle of incarceration, validated risk assessment tools are needed to help magistrates make informed decisions and remove the guesswork of setting bonds. Validated risk assessment tools are those tools that have been proven accurate and reliable in calculating the risk of a person missing court or endangering public safety if the person is released, pending the person's trial. The tool must minimize bias. Risk assessment tools categorize defendants into one of 3 categories: low, medium, or high risk. High-risk defendants are not released from custody. There is much to gain from more attention and study in pretrial reform in Tennessee. We are excited to partner with Community Resources for Justice's Crime and Justice Institute, who helped us plan and facilitate these symposiums. They have been excellent partners. They helped find national and local experts to contribute to these 3 symposiums. CJI was able to collaborate with Judge Ronald Adrien, leader in residence at Cleveland State University's Marshall College of Law, and Kennedy Spurgeon, President-elect of the National Association of Pretrial Services Agencies and Program Director for the Justice Management Institute. Staff from CJI interviewed these gentlemen. Their edited video is being posted online for you to watch. You'll be hearing more about these gentlemen's contributions a bit later in the symposium. We're also excited that some of our current and former grant recipients will be participating in our panel discussions. On board will be representation from Madison County, Hamilton County, Knox County, and Davidson County. Thank you all. For those panelists that have volunteered their time and expertise, a heartfelt thank you is in order. We could not host this symposium without your aid and volunteer spirit. We're delighted to share a new funding opportunity, which we are advertising on our website as well. The link should be live this afternoon. The link is also on the slide that Layla is going to post in the questions tab for you. So once this link is live, you'll be able to find more grant information. We are offering grants up to $50,000 each for counties, cities, and nonprofits willing to enter into an MOU agreement with a government agency to help foster pretrial reform in Tennessee communities. Our overall goal is that we want to help communities build their capacity for both pretrial risk assessment and offer quality pretrial services in their area. The grants can be used to perform strategic planning or hire a technical assistance provider like CJI to help, purchase a pretrial risk assessment or work on developing your own, purchase computers and software needed to do this type of work in the future, provide staff training, and also to provide pretrial services. Grant applications will be due by the end of October and are available on the OCJP website that Layla is posting. In conclusion, I want to thank each person who is attending today for your interest in pretrial processes. We look forward to developing new relationships and strengthening existing ones by sharing knowledge and best practices amongst one another. Pretrial reform is a long journey, and OCJP is here to provide support. As the ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, "Do the difficult things while they are easy, and do the great things while they are small. A journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a single step." Thank you all.
Thank you, Director, for joining us today, and thanks for sharing those opportunities. But with that, I want to introduce your panel for today. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Jessica Hickman, and I'm the Pretrial Manager at the Crime and Justice Institute, or CJI. CJI provides criminal and juvenile justice training and technical assistance nationwide and is partnering with OCJP to facilitate this pretrial series. I'm very excited to moderate the first panel in this series. And like Jason mentioned earlier, we will discuss why certain jurisdictions have started making changes to their pretrial systems and how they got started. As you heard from Director Brinkman, pretrial reform and criminal justice reform is a priority for OCJP. Our panelists today currently partner with OCJP on pretrial projects and have been leading the efforts in their communities. Joining us, we have Sheriff John Mayer from Madison County and Superintendent Justin Strand from Hamilton County. We're very excited to have them, and we're going to hear about what they're doing in their counties, their motivation for improving their systems, and the steps they took to get where they are now. We hope that learning about our panelists' experiences will help those of you who may be considering changes in your own systems. I am going to try to reserve a few minutes at the end for your questions. So to ask questions, please use that questions tab in your control panel. And then if we do have time, I will read the questions out loud to our panelists during the Q&A. So with that, I'm actually going to ask our panelists to spend a few minutes introducing themselves. Sheriff Mayer, can you start us off?
Okay, I'm Sheriff John Mayer. I'm in Madison County, Jackson, Tennessee. My background, I'm retired from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. I was elected sheriff in 2014. And immediately when I came in office, we found out that we were in serious trouble with our jail. We were overcrowded, and we were immediately put under a plan of action. We designed a plan of action and started working on it. And since that time, we aggressively started looking, how can we get individuals out of the jail or slow it down? So we started looking, and we looked at all of the mental health programs. We were very fortunate because we have a big collaborative, and we got involved in the mental health and then looked at pretrial and started that. And so here we are today, and we're very excited being a part of it and breaking new ground.
And we really appreciate you being here with us to share those experiences. Justin, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. As she said, I'm Justin Strand. I'm the superintendent of the alternative sentencing programs here in Hamilton County, Tennessee, Chattanooga. I've been here since 2015. I've got a master's degree in criminal justice from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Worked with Board of Probation and Parole before I was here. And my current job, I'm overseeing 5 alternative sentencing programs, including a community service program, misdemeanor probation, misdemeanor community corrections, felony community corrections program, and then of course our pretrial program, brings me here today.
Great, thank you so much for being with us, and we're very excited to talk about your pretrial program. I want to start with a question for both of you. Since your jurisdictions are participating in the OCJP grant program to improve your systems, I was hoping you could give us a brief overview of where you are in the process. And Justin, can we start with you this time?
Sure. Yeah, we are still in phase one. We've been in the contract for a little over a year now, but still in phase one in the planning stages and the technical assistance and the evaluation phases. We're a little different in that we had a risk assessment that we started up before we actually accepted the grant. So we had that going already, but we're still working on it. We're still going into all the beginning phases of collecting data. We hired a corrections service specialist, basically somebody to oversee the risk assessment and everything else going on there. And we've started meetings with our stakeholders, regular meetings with our stakeholders to get their input. And obviously we've been working on our system mapping, which is gathering all the data, getting all of our information over to CJI to start looking into and getting us some usable information back. But there's a lot of that, a lot of information, and it's taking a little bit of time to get it all put in one place. So that's in a nutshell, that's where we are. We're still in the beginning stages.
And Justin, you say phase one, but it sounds like a lot of work has been done already. So thank you for that.
Feels like.
Sheriff, what about you? Where are you in the process?
Well, we're kind of like Justin. With COVID, that shut everything down for a while and created lots of issues. We've been in the program about the same time. And then we've actually hired a person to oversee the pretrial system and the operation. He's on board, and he's getting his feet wet. Started helping work on pulling out records, and we had some obstacles with Office of the Courts trying to get those records and pulling everything down to turn it over to y'all, and it has worked. I mean, now we're in that process and we're moving forward. And I express a lot of times it's not moving as fast as I want it to move, but that's just part of the system, and we understand. But it's going to be great once we get it up and going, and we know it's going to change some lives.
That's great. And I'm curious, you gave us a little bit about where you are now, but I'm wondering, how did you go about identifying the issues and challenges that were facing your jurisdictions before you applied for this grant?
Well, one thing that we had done in the past, right after we came in office, is started looking at other ways to work in the jail, and not only the jail, but actually in our patrol division and all. And we're very fortunate in down here in West Tennessee that we've got a big collaborative. And the collaborative is made up of stakeholders from private groups. We have a big mental health group, which is Pathways, West Tennessee Healthcare, which pretty well is all over West Tennessee. We have members of that. We have other members of the probation parole group, and we all pull together and met. It's about 30 of us, but we work closely together and share information constantly. And so we met and decided that, hey, we've got to look at certain areas. So we got into the mental health diversion group and got some grants for that. We're also big in CIT and doing lots of training in CIT throughout the years. We've trained over 600 officers in CIT. And then we ended up in mental health transports, and we were a pilot for the state of Tennessee in that, and to get sheriffs to start transporting individuals in the way they should. We're also connected with NAMI, and I'm actually on the board with NAMI, and it's building that collaborative was very important. And then we started looking at what can we do for pretrial, and because we had the pretrial diversion, which actually diverted lots of people in mental illness. But we've got to look at other ways to get these other people and move them through the system, so their trial is not, and cases are not just sitting there. And let's see what we can do. And this was a great opportunity for us, and so we're excited. It's just been a journey, and you have to take the small steps to get to going up. And we're not going to stop here. We're going to continue to go.
So it sounds like you really came together and identified those challenges as a group. Is that correct?
That's correct. The collaborative, all the members of it, we sat down and decide which direction do we need to go. And we've got lots of other areas that we're in that I didn't bring up, but this is a continuing thing that we're doing. COVID has shut down our regular meetings, but you've got to pull all the other agencies, you got to pull the courts together, you got to pull all other people that are out there that really want to make a change. The volunteers, you've got to pull those groups together. So it's just everybody's got different ideas, but you pull it and you focus in on one, and you move ahead.
Great. And Justin, what about you and in Hamilton County? Did you have a similar process of identifying the issues that you wanted to address in pretrial?
We've been looking into them for a long time, all the way back to 2003. Hamilton County hired a firm to evaluate our criminal justice system and to see what changes we could make to make it more efficient, more effective. And they had plenty of ideas, but one of them was to start an alternative bond program, and which we did in 2004. So pretty ahead of our time back then. But unfortunately, that didn't really take off due to a lack of judicial support at the time. So it got put on the back burner, but there was a consistent need for something to be done with pretrial detainees because of the high number of incarcerated, the percentage at the jails and the workhouse. So we've always known there was an issue with it, and we've tried to do things. We implemented back in 2009. We started a pretrial house arrest program to try to deal with some of the clients in custody. In 2014, we started an alcohol monitoring and GPS program, and that pulled out some more out of custody. And then in 2018, as we got more and more, we had enough to really determine that we needed a standalone pretrial services program. So that's when we started that, July 1st, 2018. And with that, we started back up the alternative bond program. And we've been going with it since then. Obviously, COVID has some issues that we didn't have anything to do with, but we're working the best we can. Our numbers are always growing. We've got a dedicated staff, and we're just trying to make those changes, lower those numbers.
Great, and it sounds like you've done a lot already and are kind of ahead of the game compared to some other folks who might be just getting started. So I'm wondering, thinking back to 2000, whether it's 2003 or throughout this process, after you discovered the challenges you wanted to address, what was that first step that you took to be able to get some of these programs up and running?
Yeah, so what year was exactly? But recently, 2016 maybe, we actually visited with Davidson County and Knox counties who had already received some CJI grants to work on their pretrial programs, and just looked at what they were doing to see how it was helping them, how it was decreasing their jail numbers. And it was some great information, obviously, because we chose to kind of mirror what they were doing. So we saw they had a risk assessment. We knew it had to be, most risk assessments ask similar questions, but we knew it had to be based on empirical research, because, as soon as they ask the question, you got to tell them why you let them out. So that's when we started looking around. That was really our first step to creating the alternative bond and the risk assessment. So we were just searching on the internet, basically, and those were our first steps, looking for a risk assessment. And that's when we found the one we're currently using now, the public safety assessment.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you really did use your resources that you had available. Awesome.
Yeah.
And Sheriff, you already talked a little bit about the awesome collaborative decision-making group that you had and started with mental health and then slowly switched to pretrial. I'm curious, could you tell us a little bit more about what made you turn your focus to pretrial?
Well, our recidivism rate is 81% in our jail. We're way overcrowded. We're still overcrowded. We're actually building a state-of-the-art jail at this time that will have other programs in it to help the inmates and hopefully change that recidivism rate. But we knew that we could not continue because people were being held right after they were initially charged for a length of time. They couldn't make bond. Those people didn't need to be there. They needed to be moved out. We're handling several different courts in Madison County. You've got city court, but the judge also has general session authority. There may be city charges or smaller charges that they would put somebody in, and if they couldn't make bond, they sat there. So we had to work with the judges to get them more information to move out, and we need pretrial is going to be part of it. That if we can start that initial step, we can move these people out, and we're not holding all of these people that shouldn't be there where they can get out. The other thing is we wanted to make sure that if people got arrested, they didn't lose their job. I mean, if they lose their job or can't go to school and get their education, then where are you going to be there too? Because that cycle is going to continue. So, and we think we just thought pretrial was that. We had actually applied for the MacArthur grant years ago, trying to get it to do the exact same thing. But this was a golden opportunity, and we really wanted to move ahead because we want to move these people out and get the system moving and hopefully change some lives.
Great, and since you did have such a large group of folks kind of dedicated to behavioral health responses, how did the group respond when you started shifting gears a little bit to pretrial? Did you have to build buy-in with the group, or what did you do there?
Well, our main collaborative, we didn't have a problem. They were all supportive. They're supportive on whatever mission we want to do, because it's not sitting over here and saying this is what we like compared to what you like. We all work together and pull together and work as one, and that's the key. The problem that we did have with the former district attorney general was against it, and then we ended up with several of the judges against it because the attorney general did not want it. So we had to work with the judges, and they came on board, and then finally the attorney general agreed with us too. But under this one, we had a new attorney general, or district attorney rather, and so it made it a whole lot easier, and all the judges pulled together and are supportive of the program, and they understand it now. That was the key. It was just trying to get the buy-in there, and so it's a mission a lot of time if you haven't got involved.
And Justin, I know you mentioned that at least at the start, there might have been some issues with buy-in in Hamilton County as well. What did you do to try to get people on board?
Well, we basically just went around and asked them. We went to everybody. We bombarded them. We tried to get the stakeholder meetings. Getting everybody into those is hard, but I mean, it was just consistent effort. And I think all of the different pieces of the criminal justice system here in Hamilton County realize that there's a need for pretrial reform. It's just getting them to agree on the same path is the hard part. So basically, we've just presented this one as a way to lower the incarceration rates for pretrial inmates. We've backed it with the empirical risk assessment, hoping that will help get them on board. And we've met regularly. We've had consistent meetings with them to let everybody know the direction we're going and how we plan to get there, and just giving them a voice to give input in it. And I think that was the biggest thing that helps everybody stay on board and without going in all their different directions.
That's great. That's great. And Sheriff, I want to give you an opportunity to jump in there as well. Did you have any tips or tricks for folks trying to get judges on board?
Well, it's just, I guess, we kind of used the federal system on their pretrial and of course the assessment, telling the judges, we're going to be able to put more information in your hands when a person appears. And so if you can see that and you can see whether this person, you can see more about what their family background was, you can see how many times they've been incarcerated, you can see the financial and everything. Putting all that information in gives a judge, I guess, really a better feeling. One problem that we had with the judges, some judges, is because they had released some people years ago to get out, and they did some violent crimes. And so that was kind of a, they got shot, and so they were gun shy. So it's just trying to change that, and we hope and we feel confident that once we start the program that this information will be valuable to them and it will work for them and they'll feel better as we go. But they bought in, and so it's just us moving ahead.
Great. Well, thank you both for your insights there. I do want to shift gears just a little bit, and I know, Sheriff, you did talk a little bit about behavioral health responses in Madison County, but I'm wondering if you could just give us a little bit more information about the initiatives that you started, sort of the resources you needed to get these off the ground, and the benefits that you've seen from incorporating these behavioral health responses into your pretrial system.
Well, I think we felt like that was a big part of it because you know that people are either they're abusing drugs, or a big percent do have mental issues. It's whether they're off their medication or they're suffering from something else. And then being part of CIT, and we have a very aggressive CIT training that goes, we actually have a full week hands-on, and then we have an advanced one, and then we have train the trainer, and then we have another backup. And then also we try to, we're fixing to start one with citizens just so they can understand. But if you can get in there and get that mental health, lots of times you can change that before they ever come to jail. And so we got with the Department of Mental Health, Commissioner Williams and them, and we were very fortunate. They're on board. We're on some task forces for the state, and we got into the mental health, and then we got into the mental transport grant, how departments transport inmates and people are going for involuntary commitment. And so we came in and we became the pilot on that. And so we can demonstrate that, and we see that change. But then the other thing that we did, we're involved in some other programs. We know who these people are that have mental illness, and so officers will know it. And if a call comes in, we know that, and that's a very important factor, because in today's world, and we know that just because of all the studies, that mental illness is a big portion of the reason people are committing crime. And if you get them help, then lots of times they don't return, but you got to have somebody to stay on and follow up and make sure that they're doing what needs to be done. So with the pretrial mental health diversion, we were able to get those people, and when they were arrested, immediately try to get the judge to get them out and get them back to a treatment center and get help. And then what happened was they would get the help, but the case wasn't resolved. The judge would actually keep the person pretty well on the leash for about a year or longer, making sure that they stayed. And that's part of the thing that you have to do on all of it, is making sure you got a handle on them, because they're kind of like children. If you take your you get away from them and you're not around, they're gonna do something. But if you can stay there and you can kind of hold on to them and keep a check on them, if you can keep them out doing something and staying on their medications and or whatever it may be, if it's another crime or drugs, then we won't have this problem. So to us, that the mental health pre-release diversion works good. The pretrial risk was going to be a good thing because we can see what kind of help they need and they can get help on the front end. And the judges are going to look more favorable towards them.
And just to clarify, Sheriff, CIT, is that crisis intervention training for law enforcement?
That's correct.
Okay. And have you seen any impact on your jail population since implementing these initiatives?
Oh, yes. I mean, we see the difference in how the officers are respond and how they're treated. We have the same in the jail staff. It all works together. And, you know, we've saved lots of people, even in the mental health part of it, who would have committed suicide. We just did that just a night or two ago, and then that's about a weekly occurrence. But the people are trained. So, you know, it all works together to meet the end.
Thank you, Sheriff, for that. And Justin, I want to ask you a very similar question. Did Hamilton County implement any alternatives to pretrial detention for anyone who may have mental health or substance abuse issues?
Most of Hamilton County's programs are post-conviction. We have mental health court, we have drug court sessions in a criminal level. So most of them are post-conviction. However, within the last year, we did receive, the sheriff's office and our development department did receive several $1 million to begin the FUSE project, the Frequent User System Engagement Project. So basically that's a program that provides wraparound support for homeless individuals with mental health problems who, you know, go through hospitals and jails and shelters over and over again. So they've recently begun one, got the funding for it, ready to get it going. I'm pretty sure COVID had a damper on that, but it's there and it's coming. So we're starting it, yes.
Great, I'm excited to hear more about that as you're able to get it off the ground a little bit more.
We are too.
We actually have a couple of questions from our participants that I'd like to ask both of you. And one of them is, did you take steps to get the community on board with the changes that you were making in your systems? And Justin, I'll start with you.
The community? Not specifically, no. The changes we're making were really driven, unfortunately, not unfortunately, by the almighty dollar. I mean, pretrial detention is expensive. Keeping these people in custody costs over $100 per day. To have them on our program is approximately $2 to $3 per day. So it was a no-brains solution that, you know, this is something we need to do. We need to get out the nonviolent, the lower risk, the ones likely to get back into court, to stay in the community and keep their jobs and keep paying taxes and all that stuff. So nothing specifically that I can think of that where we got the community involvement, but so not that I can think of at the moment.
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
Sheriff, what about you? Did Madison County take any steps to get the community involved?
Well, I think we probably did, not knowing in a way, because part of our collaborative group, our members, because we have volunteer groups that are from the community. And so I would say, yes, we do that. The other thing that we had was, since we were in a problem with overcrowding and with our jail, and knowing that we're going to have to build a new jail, that brings lots of other issues in. And we had to sell the community on that too. But we also, during that time, said we were looking for other ways to keep people out of the jail. diversions or what it may be. Those would be programs that we would have. And so we in a way, invited the community to hear these ways and ideas that we have. And so I think we got buy-in. We did have community meetings when we were doing lots of these programs and invited the community to come in and other people. So I think if you can get community buy-in, that's helpful. It's just how to get them there lots of times.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you both have done a lot of work to get the pretrial stakeholders on board already. So maybe that's just one more step in that process. I'm just going to take a moment to let our attendees know that we are going to be doing a short Q&A session. So if you do have questions for our panelists, please feel free to post them in the questions tab under your control panel. And then I will go ahead and read your questions out loud to Justin and Sheriff Mayer as time allows. We have a couple of others already. What is the one thing that you wish you knew before taking on pretrial reform? And I think this is for both of our panelists, but I'll ask Justin first.
One thing I wish I knew before taking on pretrial reform. I mean, it's a government process. It's a lot of red tape, a lot of steps to it, a lot of people involved in it. So I don't know that I didn't know that it was going to be a lot of work, but just to realize it up front, I suppose that it's not going to be done overnight. It's not going to be immediate. It's a long road.
Absolutely. Longer than you think sometimes, right?
Yes.
Sheriff, what about you? What was one thing that you wish you knew before you started pretrial reform?
Well, I think because of the other programs that we had been involved in and knew how the process works, and it's kind of like Justin said, it's government and it's a long road ahead, and it doesn't run as fast as we would like it. And so I can't say, there probably are some, but we were kind of prepared. We knew kind of what we were getting in. We had looked at some other pretrial programs in other states and kind of how they operated, and did lots of research before we got involved. And so that kind of helped prepare us. So I guess we didn't really encounter something we weren't prepared for. I mean, we knew that there were going to be bumps in the road.
Absolutely. I have another question for Justin. How do you plan to measure the outcomes of your pretrial program?
How do we plan to measure the outcomes? Well, that's half of the battle, really. That's why we've partnered with OCJP and CJI, is to get that information, to get those measurable data points. We've luckily had a very capable IT department here in Hamilton County that collects massive amounts of data. So really making it into usable information is the key, our key goal here, for one of the goals for the grant. So we're measuring success by failure to appear rates. We have a couple other goals. I mean, that's the biggest one, measuring failure to appear rates, measuring levels of incarceration in the jail. So that's how those are the main ones. We've got several other ones that will help show us if we're getting in the right direction, but those are the main ones.
Great. And Sheriff, it sounds like you are also looking pretty closely at the numbers in your jail as well. So is that kind of a benchmark for you too?
It is, and we're going to rely a lot on y'all once we get everything up and running to help do the measurement. But that's where you've got to look at that, and you've got to see the ones that are coming back, and that recidivism is a big obstacle.
Sheriff, if other sheriffs throughout the state are looking to implement pretrial reform, what should their first step be?
Well, I think they're going to have to reach out to their judges and their district attorney and see if they're going to be interested. You've got to build your stakeholders and bring them together as one. And that's the reason we were very fortunate because of our collaborative that was pulled together and had been working together. So you got to put your differences aside and move as one group when you get ready to take on a new program. And that's what I would say. You got to get that buy-in and them agreeing to do it on the front end, because if you get started, you've got everybody else and they don't buy in, you're going nowhere.
And that actually is a perfect lead into our next question here from an attendee, which is, it seems like in these jurisdictions, the pretrial programs are housed in the sheriff's office, but what was the role of the court system in getting all of this started?
Well, ours is actually not once we get running, our coordinator is actually housed with the sheriff's office and at the jail. But once we get the pretrial going, our community corrections group, which is another part of the county, will actually be running that part of it and keeping up with that. So there will be different phases throughout this process that other departments will be involved in, and we would not be able to run it ourselves because we're not into probation, parole, and all of that, and so that's one reason we pushed it over there. So it's a joint effort, but these are also part of your collaborative groups.
Hmm.
That's how it started here too. We're actually under the mayor. The Hamilton County Alternative Sentencing Programs is actually housed under the mayor, not the sheriff. So to be, even before we started the pretrial program, we had the support of the mayor. So he was on board, and then we got the judges and everybody else who saw the need. And the sheriff's office was actually responsible for moving a small portion of their budget to our program to start our pretrial program. So they were all involved in it as well.
Great. And besides the collaboration and the buy-in that you needed, what were some of the other resources that you needed to get these projects started? Justin, I can start with you.
Resources, we needed staff, and like I just said, we got that from some budget moving around, and we needed the risk assessment, and fortunately we chose a free risk assessment, the public safety assessment, the PSA. Everything we needed was online available, and we, like I said, we had a very capable IT department that was able to integrate it automatically into our process, our booking process, so the magistrates can pull it up anytime someone's booked and sitting in front of them, so they can use it as a tool to determine bond issues. So that's basically what we did.
And Sheriff, what about Madison County? What resources did you need to get started?
Well, our biggest thing was, because we had all these other programs going, we had to look at a grant or something. We weren't going to be able to fund it. I mean, we were in the middle of basically a $50 million jail expansion and all of this other. We're looking at all the mental health, all of these others, and so basically we had to look for funding somewhere, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to start it.
Our next question actually takes us in a slightly different direction, but I think it's a good one. What steps will you take in your pretrial programs to make sure that victims are protected? We'll start with Justin.
Well, I mean, our main goal is public safety. Everything we do is to protect the public and the victims being within that. We have electronic monitoring devices we place on clients. We have exclusion zones. We have high-risk clients that if they enter a certain area, we have immediate response to start working the process to get them off the streets back into the jail where they need to be. And we have all sorts of those devices in place. We have GPS, alcohol monitoring, all that kind of stuff to keep the public and victims safe.
Great. And what about Madison County Sheriff? Have you thought about victim safe?
Ours is going to be kind of like Justin. I mean, that's the reason the pretrial officers are going to be important, is because they're going to be able to monitor and keep up with these individuals at any time, whether it's bracelets or other ways or phones, and making sure they're going to appear in court. They're going to notify them and let them know, and so all of that kind of pulls together to really kind of just keep a strong hand on them, to let them know, and if they violate the rules, then the judge is going to revoke them. So it's I think that's part of the program, and our goal is like Justin says, is we've got to protect the victims, and the victims are going to know. I mean, we've got victim notification that we use now, and it's very important. And we have our victim coordinators are involved with everything we do, and we have to share that information and work together.
And a follow-up question to that, who pays for the GPS monitoring in both of your counties?
Here in Hamilton County, it's paid for by the clients. They have to reimburse us for the cost of the equipment at cost. So there's no installation fees, there's no anything else. It's just exactly what it costs us to rent the equipment. Except for our house arrest equipment, which we own, and that is paid for by the county.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then for those, I know, Sheriff, you're still sort of working on getting the pretrial supervision part of your program up and running. So this, Justin, might be a better question for you. What types of services do clients get while they are on pretrial supervision?
There's, I mean, we're always looking for more. Being a pretrial population, it's kind of hard to mandate that anybody take any services, because they have not been convicted of any crime. So of course we will point them in the direction of services where needed, but it's a very difficult population to deal with when it comes to services in drug and alcohol treatment, high school equivalency classes, stuff like that. So we do point them if they want it, if they're interested. We don't currently offer any right now, except for our felony community corrections program, but that's provided through the state. But something we're interested in expanding and having available for some of our other programs, our misdemeanor programs that we're working on right now. So it's in the future.
And Jessica, I would also say that, in Madison County, our pretrial and then our mental health pretrial and all that will continue to work together. I mean, it's working, taking that other program, but you're using both of them to hopefully actually give a wide range of service for these individuals. And so you're using all the resources available. And I mean, so because our mental health part and behavioral health that we're involved in, and having drug counselors and having mental health counselors, and then just the way we're doing things, that has to be a part of it. You can't just push it, because if you don't work it together, and if you don't have all of these programs trying to go, then I'm not sure if you can be successful. So it's we'll have to, and we do. Behavioral health is a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to remind our participants that we are taking a couple of more questions, get a few more minutes before we wrap up here. So if you do have a question for our panelists, please type it into the questions tab on your control panel, and then I'll be able to read it out loud to them. Unfortunately, we cannot unmute everyone just because of the number of people we have on with us today. We do have a couple of other questions. Let me see here. So we have a couple that kind of go back to looking at getting stakeholder buy-in and getting people on board with your process. This one is for Sheriff Mayer. You talked about that there was a bit of an issue in the past when you had started these reform efforts. What did you do to help the judges and the DA kind of work through that hesitation to start up again?
Well, I think we went and looked at a different approach of describing how it was going to work. And we actually, and I mentioned too, we used the federal system of federal courts, how they work. And actually judges and even the DA knows a little bit about that. So it's just being able to explain what you're going to be able to give them, be able to put in their hands. And the first time we started, we had pretty well the buy-in of most of the judges, and we felt pretty good about it. I think at that time the DA that was here actually was the one that kind of put the cold water on it, because they just didn't see the big picture. But then now we have a new DA, and he understands it, and the judges have bought into it, and they understand it. And we did have one, the city judge had been involved in the drug court, mental health court, and all of that. So that was another good thing, is because he was handling some of these types of cases and could see the big picture and wanting to do something. And so it's reaching out and seeing your one or two or three people that can help sell somebody else. And it's not one person. I mean, ours was a joint group of individuals working together, and everybody has a piece of the pie. So it's not a leader, and don't try to use somebody as a leader to do it. You've got to look at each person that has some vested interest, because each one of them has a great part of it, and they can bring a lot to the table. So it's working as one, not separate.
Absolutely. Justin, I have one more question for you. How long has your program been live or operational, and how would you rate the success so far?
The pretrial program itself has officially existed since July 1st of 2018. So a little over 2 years, right? Yeah. So what was the question? How would I rate the success of it?
So far, yep.
So far, we are up and running. We have our pretrial program has plenty of participants. Our failure to appear rates are very comparable, lower than 99% of our bondsmen in the county, our alternative bond programs. I'd say it's going well. We always have room for more. We're looking to grow it, just because it is less expensive to house people here than it is at the county jail. So, we have room to grow if we need to. We're looking forward to getting more data on our risk assessment and how it's working and what we can do to change it, to fine tune it. And that's going to come with more contact with the stakeholders and CJI and all that. So it's going well. We're here. We're doing great. We're ready to keep going and make more changes.
Great. Well, thank you both for being here. I kind of want to wrap up with the same question for both of you. We talked about a lot today, but I'm hoping just to bring it back to our initial purpose and ask again, what was your main motivation for starting this project with OCJP? And what are your goals? What do you hope to accomplish by the end of this project when you're on the other side looking back? Justin, why don't we start with you?
I mean, our goals are simple: to decrease failure to appear rates, improve our justice system through data-driven framework for pretrial release decision making. That's what's written down here. So that's one of our main goals. We wanted to get the risk assessment in place. We wanted to get it up and running. We wanted to be able to use empirical backing to say that this is working or not working. Not just because we think it's a good idea, but because it's actually proven that it's the risk of releasing somebody to a pretrial program is not greater than letting them out or having them pay a bond to get out. So those are our main goals.
Great, thank you. Sheriff, same question for you. If you could just remind us, what was your motivation for starting this project, and then what do you hope to accomplish by the end?
Well, our whole goal was to try to alleviate some of the overcrowding in the jails, and try to turn that. But also, our goal is to change lives. We've got to change those people's lives not to come back. And the other thing is, we did not want them sitting there in jail, waiting weeks and weeks and months. If there's a way to move them out and still keep our society secure and safe, and the victims safe, and that's first priority. Is it's a risk when you take it. That's the reason it's a risk assessment, but it's you've got to protect our citizens, because they are the ones who are paying the bill, funding everything. The criminals, they're not paying their part, but you hope that with doing all of this, that you will make them productive citizens and get the help that they need if they have a problem.
Great. Well, thank you again, both of you, for being here with us today and sharing your experiences with pretrial reform. I know that there are other folks throughout Tennessee who are looking to do similar things, and I think that your experiences will help them a lot as they start to do that. So thank you again. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I apologize if I didn't get to your question. This is all we have time for today. Your questions were great. Thank you so much for participating. But right now, I am actually going to turn it back over to OCJP, to Jeremiah Morton, who is Assistant Director, to share a few more things with you before we wrap up the webinar today.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeremiah Morton, and I'm the Assistant Director of Programs with OCJP. I want to thank you for joining us for the first of 3 live webinars in our Tennessee Pretrial Symposium series. Today's webinar gave us a glimpse at some of the important pretrial work which is currently ongoing in Tennessee. During our next webinar, which is scheduled for Thursday from 1:30 to 3:30, or from 1:30 to 3 rather, p.m. Central Time, we will hear what it's like to implement a pretrial on a state level when we speak with Tara Blair, who's the Executive Officer for Kentucky's statewide Pretrial Services Department. Ms. Blair will talk about how Kentucky started their program, how they overcame challenges in implementing new pretrial policies and practices, and how the changes they made helped improve their system. If you haven't registered for the second webinar yet, it's not too late. You can easily do that by following the link on the screen or by clicking on the registration link that we will post in the questions tab. Remember to check out the interviews with our national pretrial experts, Judge Ronald Adrine and NAPSA President-elect Spurgeon Kennedy, which can be found on our event website. Check out the link on screen to hear more about effective alternatives to detention from Judge Adrine and how to use data to make better decisions for your jurisdiction. And finally, I wanted to plug our pretrial grant solicitation, which is now available on our website. If you're a jurisdiction who is interested in taking the initial steps towards implementing pretrial practices, we encourage you to apply for one of the $50,000 grants we have available. You can find our applications on our website or by following the following link, which is tinyurl.com/OCJP grants. That address again is tinyurl.com/OCJP grants, all one word. We will also send this information electronically to all of our attendees. Thanks again for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you on Thursday.